Hey, this is Wookie from Mandala Studios. Welcome to the workshop. Today we're going through how we made an acrylic ball mask. To start with, we made the visor for the piece. So what we did is we roughed out where the visor was going to sit on the ball and then cut out a rough template to give us an idea of the positioning, then reworked it a few times using a whiteboard marker on an acrylic dome so we could kind of see if we could see through the holes that were going to be left. Then we took some transparent worbla and added some mirrored window tinting film in gold. Then we traced out our pattern onto that and cut it out. Then we just smoothed out as many of the bubbles and things as we could. Trimmed it around. Then we heated it up gently and pushed it over the acrylic ball we were going to use. And we pushed it on the inside and then ran some window rubber trim around the outside to give it some protection. Cut neatly into the corners to make a nice finish. Then we just glued that in place on the black with some super glue. Then to fabricate the ball, we took a pair of acrylic domes and we worked out where we need to cut off the bottom and just ran that through in a straight line on the bandsaw. Each half using one as a template, one offcut as the template for the other, so they fit pretty well together. And we set them together and we start to glue the two halves together. We just use super glue for this, with some accelerator spray. And you can see we just worked in parts round, just line everything up, bit of super glue, bit of spray, inside and outside, letting the super glue work via a capillary action to get all the way through. That gives us our dome sitting nicely on the table. Then we start the sanding process. Started off with like an 80 grit sandpaper, just getting the crystallized super glue back down to ball. We're going to need to do a lot of sanding over this process to get rid of any of the seam line where it wasn't quite perfectly aligned. The super glue creates some crystal structure which needs taking down, and the entire surface just needs sanding as well to roughen it up to key in for painting. Next we need to work out the strapping for the head and positioning it. So to do that we took a face protection visor headband which neatly ratchets at the back to adjust size, and we added some foam spacers to drop it to so the mask sat in the right place so you could look through where the eyes were going to look through. And we glued that in place, just touched it in place with some super glue to start with, make sure it sat right. Check the eye positions, mark those in. Then we test it so we can make sure we're looking through the eyes. Rearrange that position slightly, and we glue the inside in with some foam strips and then some spacer mesh to make the whole thing comfortable, which we spray glued in place. Now back to the process of filling and sanding. First of all, we need to cut out the eyes, so we just run that around with a rotary tool with a cutting wheel attachment. Until the eyes are all cut cleanly from the piece. And just neaten up that bottom edge where it wasn't perfectly aligned. Then we go in with a sanding bit, or stone grinding bit, sandpaper. And it's just a gentle process of sand it, clean it, neaten up edges, sand it, clean it. Then we give it a quick spray with a layer of plastic primer, and then once that's dry, a layer of filler primer. This gives us a bit more bulk to sand off, so we make sure we're filling those seams. It also allows us to really nicely see the edges. So to mask those edges, we mix up some car body filler and just smooth that in along the seam. And you can see it's alternating sides where the step of the ball halves connect. So we just fill that in, leave it to dry, then sand it with a sanding sponge. We go over the entire surface with a fine sanding sponge as well, so that we can put the next layer of paint and things on. Basically we need to sand everything all the time to try and get this to key together as best we can, so we can get a good high gloss finish later. You can see there that dark mark is just the original plastic showing through as we've gone through all the paint and filler. So we know we're pretty much far down as we want to go there, so we need to build up around the other side of that. So again, mixed up some body filler, smooth it on, and work through it again with different grades of sanding sponge and a mesh sander. You can see we're kicking up a lot of dust. I should really be wearing a dust mask for this, but I'm in a well vented space with an extractor running, but still not ideal. And we go down with various different sanding grits and Scotch Brights. I broke a tiny bit there, so I just patched that back up with some super glue. Working through the grits of things. Then again, layer of plastic primer. Give that a sand. Again, go through the different grades. Once that's all done, we get ready to paint it, so we go again with a layer of plastic primer, make sure we get a good even coverage of the whole thing, give it a quick key down with a very fine thing, then we're spraying it with a high gloss black plastic paint. A couple of passes on that, and we get it all black. Then we put some more plastic edge trim around all the edges. We're putting a thin layer around the eyes, and then we'll go to a thick layer around the neck. The neck piece wasn't actually edge trim, it was just some rubber hosing that looked like it was supposed to look. Then we just push that into position. Get to the right size, push it in place. Then to mount the visor, we added some Velcro tabs to the back and positioned those, and then transferred that onto the front of the ball. The reason for this is we wanted to leave an air gap between the visor and the mask itself, so it didn't fog up as much, because this was for a DJ who'd be wearing it whilst DJing in a hot nightclub. So little drops of super glue on each of the things, lay it into position, and there you go, one finished mask. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe and all that good stuff.